Welcome to FOB YouTube. I guess it's time for an official introduction. My name is Michael Weber. I served in the United States Army 2005 to 2007 when I was recruited into CID while stationed in Baghdad. Upon returning from Baghdad, I worked with local law enforcement and CID in Fairbanks, Alaska, conducting reconnaissance operations on local drug dealers that were supplying not just the civilians, but the troops with cocaine. And at the time, OxyContin was just starting to kick off. During my time working as an undercover, we were able to identify numerous drug dealers and troops that were involved in illegal activity on and off post. The result of my operations, along with CID, resulted in two big raids at the time, one of a local strip club and one of a house where someone had set up shop. You see, the whole idea was never to be a snitch or bust troops necessarily. It was who was supplying the troops, how are they getting it into the state, how are they getting it in on post, and the effects that this could have on not just garrison life, but combat operations overseas. The corruption of the ranks that would jeopardize combat missions and the very way of life for the military. When I left the military, I was stationed in the Midwest, Minnesota. The objective when stationed in Minnesota was troop accountability and reconnaissance, keeping tabs on National Guardsmen and active duty service members, as well as identifying local drug dealers and potential issues that would compromise the integrity or the mission of the United States Armed Forces. 2007 to 2008, Snow White is identified. After my time in Minnesota, I went down to Illinois to live with a buddy, and orders were drafted up for me to once again work with a small team conducting reconnaissance and undercover work. And we were able to identify several issues. It was in Illinois I took my big hit as an undercover and ended up getting pulled from CID and undercover work and put into the VA for treatment. We got another undercover CID guy over here. So it was at the VA system when I was getting treatment for my TBI and concussions. Whether you believe it or not, I mean, like, at some point it doesn't matter anymore, right? We craft these stories to make ourselves feel better, regardless of whether they're true or not. Some people will believe them, some people won't. So after retiring from undercover operations, I was slotted into psychological operations at the VA. Well, not with the VA, but while treatment at the VA. So for those of you that don't know what psychological operations is, it is actually everything encompassing life itself. It's everyday life, 9 to 5s, boring stuff for the most part, all the way up to full-blown warfare. And my primary role was understanding the effects of psychological warfare and different tactics that could be beneficial in combating that. And some of those include medications and trials. How do you stop signal intel groups from compromising your forces? And this is kind of... So after leaving the Midwest, I ended up down south in Tennessee at the National Security Complex here in Knoxville. Now, for those of you who know that place, it's a mixture of kind of everything. It's mainly environmental services and stuff like that. But it was here in Knoxville that we continued our work in psychological operations, and also was tasked with keeping or identifying threats, potential threats and compromises within the VA system itself. Now, this is systemic negligence and how it could be really detrimental, or a better word for that would be, come on nerds, where are you at? Devastating. It's a simple one to remember, come on. To the American way of life, really. So how can systemic negligence affect, within the VA system, affect everyday life for not just veterans or the military, but the communities we inhabit or live amongst? Now, I've told you that psychological operations is pretty much everything involving life, and everyone is in part of it on some level, whether they know it or not, whether they like it or not. It's just psychology. It's a byproduct of being a human and being alive. Now, you start to go towards the opposite end of the spectrum to psychological warfare, and that is where I am a psychological operations specialist. It was here that I took the biggest hit of all, the one that I probably shouldn't have walked away from, and that was in 2019 when the VA was medicating, well, had me on a few different medication trials, and the doctor, in my opinion, was extremely negligent. Some of the staff that was under him actually were top-notch. You know, they actually were probably some of the better staff I worked with. It was, however, the doctor that kept pushing all these different meds and stacking them in hopes of counteracting symptoms and that were caused by other meds. So when you're stacking all these meds, how do you identify the actual problem? And when it was all said and done, on that night in June, the doctor popped smoke, retired. Haven't seen him, haven't heard from him since. 2020 hit, everyone was on lockdown. It was after 2020 that the real work began for me and my intel group. You see, the doctors that remained here in Tennessee that were tasked with the care and oversight of my team, including myself, began the process of identifying where the problem was, where the actual problem was with what meds and where, when, why, how, who, what, well, you know, the usual. And it was shortly after 2020 when we were down to one or two meds, and it was the last med, the one med that I think, in my opinion, was the root of all evil in my life. And it was the mood stabilizer, venlafaxine, which is designed to, but I'll tell you that it was the root of all evil for my life. It might be completely different for someone else. And that's the different thing about psychology, is there's no one pill for all. There are no cure-all pill for everyone. It's gonna be different for everyone. So it was at this time I reported to North Chicago Naval Base, and I got in touch with a couple of SEALs up there, and also checked in with the VA up there to, I guess at this point it was to get off the final med. And that's where I ended up in Special Operations, Special Warfare Division of the Naval Special Warfare Group. Now, there are a bunch of chunks missing from this storyline right here from like 2021 or 22 all the way up until present day. But the point is, it was a rough path, but that's when a lot of the real work, the advanced work that got me to where I am now, here today, began. So why am I telling you this story? This tree gives. I'm screwed. I'm gonna be cold. Just walked out here on this branch, and if I have bad TBI, I wouldn't have really good balance, right? And this is kind of like where I've been saying I'm on this specialized treatment for TBI. Now, I have moments where I have good balance, and there's moments where I lose balance, or I get tone, some of the tones are tinnitus stuff, but where I'll just lose my balance. But I like to practice this stuff because this is good exercise. You know, there was a point in time where, in the beginning of my VA journey, where me and my buddy rode dirt bikes, and some of that was to test our balance while we were on certain pharmaceutical trials, and how you respond to certain things. So now I'm nervous that I might get vertigo out here. Hold on, I'm gonna have to turn around. And that's the other stigma, is people think that, oh, you have a TBI or you've had concussions, that means that you should be completely messed. I mean, in some cases, yes, there's a spectrum. There is a spectrum of injury. And that's why a lot of this stuff is experimental treatments for correcting that. And how can you adaptive therapies, adaptive physical therapy to work towards being more mobile and more able, really. What's up, bud? Anyways, me walking this, and yes, there are a lot of people that have worse TBIs. And in a lot of cases, it progresses and it gets worse as we get older. And like I said, I'm nervous that my particular concussions are going to develop into CTE. So how do we identify veterans that have injuries, actual injuries that have been rated and have actually, how do you identify the fake or the actors or the fake injuries from the real injuries, when a veteran such as myself wants to get out and be active and work past the injury, work past the illness, my balance? I just did a balance test, a frog on a log. How do you encourage that without causing fear that they're gonna be labeled as such? So how do you encourage veterans to work past and do physical therapies and work therapies without fear of them losing their statuses or disabilities that, for all intents and purposes, may progress and get worse as they get older, right? So I talked about early on in my VA day, the pharmaceutical trial I was on was, in some ways, the meds helped and they didn't help, but the whole study was, in part, how's your balance? Can you maintain balance doing certain things and activities? And that's the thing, people don't realize that there's a lot of different studies going on, and you look at it on face value and you see someone living their life and you think, well, why do they get to do that? Oh, you know, and it's like, you're welcome to join. It's not all freaking, it's not all gravy. It's not all whatever you want to call it. There are probably more moments in a veteran's journey that are dark, and it's like you're in an infinite abyss of nothingness. Now, I agree. I think that the VA system in general, so if you do allow veterans to do certain things, and in fact, I said it before, I think most veterans wouldn't want to collect compensation if there's no need to, necessarily, but I would gladly give up my compensation for someone to take the weight of the things I carry day to day and give me an honest-to-God opportunity to go off on a career that of my choosing, really. You know, like, I have a few different things where I'm like, I wish I did this instead of PSYOP or this or that, you know, like, who can get me a waiver? And you know what I would probably choose? I'd probably go back and do it all again, just the basic stuff. Fuck all this special shit, bro.